Cool. So we're now recording for the first time ever. It is Thursday, the 16th of November, and this is Morgan and David in conversation for the third time. How is your world, Morgan? How is your life?
Oh, I really don't like that question.
Well, don't answer it then.
Uh, um,
What's going on?
Actually, it's been pretty spectacular. It's been really spectacular in the last week. I had a wobble this afternoon where I thought I was literally going to explode into a ball of fire. But yeah, pretty spectacular at the moment. There was so many exciting things going on, so many new skills and abilities and awarenesses, and I feel like we're moving through and dusting. We're just getting rid of all those old dregs of the leftovers hanging around. And the minute that we neutralize it, we've recoded ourselves. We're actually recoding the new human at the moment, I feel.
So when you say new skills and abilities, what do you mean? How is that showing up for you then?
How that's been showing up for me, it's been a slow process for the last 2 or 3 weeks, but it's so loud at the moment. I've become completely aware of two voices in my head. My old wounded ego voice might say, "Oh, I don't want to do that." And immediately afterwards, I've got this other voice that comes in. It's almost like it's speaking to the wounded ego, saying, "Well, you could, what if this happened?" And it's assisting me to make a new choice immediately, unless I've dropped into 3D like this afternoon, well, an hour ago. Then I forget that. But it is guiding me constantly every day. I hear this ego voice saying, "I just want to say," this other voice comes in and say, "Oh, you could say this."
And the skill then, I guess, is learning to pay attention to the voice of your higher self rather than the voice that's going to get you in
Yeah,
trouble. Isn't it?
that's right. Well, that's one of the skills. But also, I mean, this that's one of the things that's happened. But I mean, the expansion of the universal or cosmic help that's become available in that time, and if this voice is talking to us more and more often, like every day, really guiding us to try new things or more expanded ideas or quicker, easier neutralization techniques. Yeah, I'm loving it.
I had memories a few years ago now of being in a temple in Egypt as a lion-headed being, and this was many thousands of years ago, 10 or 12,000, or somewhere that looked like Egypt. It looked like an Egyptian temple, but it could have been an Atlantean temple, to be honest. And we were, in those times, aware that we were living on this planet experiencing a degree of separation. It wasn't the separation we moved into at all, but there was this direct communion and direct contact with our ascended self or our greater self or higher self, whatever you want to call it. And there came a point where I was so angry at the guidance that was coming that I ripped out the connection. And it was a really, really painful thing to do. And having that experience probably 8 years ago of consciously ripping this out and in effect saying, "Fuck you, I'm not doing it your way." And that was how I've lived my life, was fuck you, I'm not listening to you, I'm doing it my way. And it made so much sense. But for me, my version of that is the years of work that has taken me to work through the resistance and the ego, the arrogance of, I'm going to do it my way, and not, even though I could hear the guidance or knew what that still small voice was saying, I'd be like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go in my, and my choice always led to destruction and disaster, usually, or a really painful road. And slowly over the years, it's been like a whittling away of that resistance to come into ever more alignment. But that really shifted a couple of weeks ago. So there was almost like a much bigger channel of alignment opened up on the inside. So there was just much more energy flowing in that channel. and the resistance seems ridiculous, puny, futile in a sense, if that makes sense. So your we just want to say that if anybody has any questions or comments or anything, please write them in, and we will try and take a. Oh, there are some people watching. So any questions you may have or anything, put them in, and we'll try and keep up with them and make a note and bring them up in the conversation. So I wanted to ask about your. Well, firstly, you said you'd exploded into a ball of fire. What was that?
I didn't. I thought I might. I thought I might. I was walking around the house saying, "Oh, God, I'm so angry. I'm so angry." And you know, for half an hour, maybe an hour actually, until I started laughing about it. But for me, it was, I've had these words of gullible, naivety, trust, where I've been moving through these different layers. You know, my naivety. I think I've had rose-colored glasses on my whole life. I didn't know that wasn't trust. So moving from naivety and gullibility and then into trust, because all these new beings that have come in the last week, you know, they're advising me, you have to do whatever it takes to get to faith. Your powers, everyone's powers are about to really, you know, amp up. And there's no use trying to do something or create something if you don't have faith that you can do it. So, you know, just letting all this sit here, you know, I discovered that, well, what I came to today that made me angry was how much I haven't respected myself through, you know, not enough trust or running off naivety or something. So the anger was, why didn't I have more respect for myself, more trust in myself, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it wasn't, but it was pretty big. You know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm due on with David in 45 minutes, and I feel like I'm about to explode into a fireball. But I think I've moved through it.
And did you do anything to consciously move that energy through then?
Yeah, I walked. I walked back and forth all through the house saying, I'm so angry. Oh my God, I can't believe how angry I am. And it worked, I think. Or it just went to the side and it'll come back, you know, when we finish this live. I don't know.
Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? Sometimes I'm aware that I can park stuff. Okay, it's like I've got something to do. I'm going to park this until later. And then often it comes back in a different way when I've parked it. It's been worked on by a different part of me, and it comes back in with different facets to it. But I think that the energy of anger that we've all suppressed on this planet, I think we've all been trained to suppress, men and women, perhaps women more so than men, then when it's allowed as energy and you feel it in your body as heat moving, it becomes a really creative force, or a force for potential healing, because it burns its way through the blocks we've put in place. So it can be a really useful thing. And I think we're frightened of it. We're really frightened of it because we know when that energy moves, it's like the lava in a volcano. It creates new forms, new structures. It burns away the old, and it creates new patterns, and it allows you to be different, because it comes into your field and literally strengthens the field. So your boundaries get better, and that builds then self-respect, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. But I mean, by doing that, we've also recycled energy, released it. We've taken 100% responsibility for energy's energy. It's either operating at a higher vibration or a lower vibration. So by finding something of our own and transmuting it back in, shining the light on it, transmuting it back to love, we're now taking responsibility or accountability for all of the energy that we've been using.
Yeah. And I think in these times when times are really volatile, often what I see is where somebody isn't taking responsibility for their energy. They literally push it out to the edge of their energy field, so it gets projected, and somebody else in the room will pick that up and run with it, or feel dumped on by it, simply because they're a sponge for that type of energy. and we each have to take responsibility for those sorts of dynamics. But when you take responsibility for something, you're no longer pushing it out. You're no longer refusing to feel it for yourself. So you're not having to push it out to the edge of your field, and it moves through the center. And it actually, as we feel something, it literally strengthens us and gives us insight and awareness about who we are, what we've been through, what we've done, and the level of our own power we've been avoiding, because it's always about that to some extent, I think.
I think now more than ever, we're all starting to remember that these things that we've avoided, these shadow things that we've avoided, or we've projected onto someone else and believed it's somebody else, however we've done it, is where we're finding our true unconditional love for self, truth, our own power. It's so important to do at the moment. And, you know, I'm hoping that when this is cleared tonight, or by the time it's not going to be an active program in my field that's sending out a signal for somebody else to pick it up for me and play it out for me.
And if you were to put, or could you put words to that active program? Could you give a name to that active program that you're currently parking while we do our little conversation?
No, I think this is happening so easily because of all that, the cosmic or universal or galactic assistance, the assistance from our higher aspects or whatever. You know, the first point of healing or transmutation is awareness. So a lot of people, I've seen a lot of people writing posts about how, oh, you just have to sit in it and feel it. Um, they're very clever, you know, that they've been able to get to that point. Like, that's just really being offered to me now more than ever before. More than ever before. Like, I'm having monads come in. I'm having this group of grandmothers come in, like giving me specific instructions.
And is this the team of guides you talked about, this new team of beings? Then it's the grandmothers. Yeah. You used a word to describe them, or a couple of words, which I can't remember yesterday. Something like fierce. I can't remember what it was, but it made me laugh because I thought it's a really beautiful
Our
description.
souls.
It wasn't that one. But
They are they are tough, they are loving, they are direct, they're so clever. Like, they'll ask a question and I'll sit there and think that I don't even know what that means. And when the question's presented, it's taking it like to the deepest levels. They're really rough. They're wonderful, but they're rough, tough.
hard old bitches, huh? I had an
Yeah.
experience with the grandmothers a couple of years ago, maybe, where they came in very strongly. And I can't remember what it was about, but it was about some planetary process. And they told me, build a fire up in the garden and come and sit at the fire with us. And nothing particular happened other than the whole energy of the garden shifted. And I was sitting in the dark, aware of this group of beings, the grandmothers, around this fire. And something got burnt away in that process. It was powerful. And as I walked back into the house, I was really shocked at coming from the energy of the natural world, even in my little garden, back into the world of inside reality, you know, the inner house, because it was such a strong shift, and it made me aware of what an altered state I'd been in with this group of formidable elders.
Formidable.
They
Yes,
are
that's them.
formidable, aren't they? They're really formidable, and they're another aspect of our support system that is available. I'm glad you're bringing up this thing about the availability of support, because it is phenomenal. And I think a lot of people don't quite realize how loved and supported we are in this process, and how it is recognized that this is a really challenging process for the human aspect of us. And there's a vast amount of support available. And it came in for me last night doing the small group, and I thought, I haven't taken any time to focus on anything here. And I was sitting meditating maybe 10 minutes before we were due to start the small group. And it was like this backup of energy just came in and said, do you think you're going to be left high and dry at this stage of the game? And it was that go. And it was extraordinary, actually. This energy came in very early on in the small group, and it was pushing. And of course, I was running a little bit of my own agenda, thinking, I want to touch on this and this and this. But this energy was insistent, and I should have run with that energy from the word go, this powerful, powerful golden light of that wanted to communicate that internal support and wanted to help us build internally a field of golden support. And it was literally running through people's skeletons and into the field to build a sense of support. So it really is powerfully available at this point in time, I think, and I would encourage anybody just to take 10 minutes and sit and invite your team to bring support in a tangible way for you, because it is very available.
Have you had some training? That looks so professional, the way you stopped looking at me and looked straight at the camera. It's like he's had some training.
I wasn't even aware that I was looking straight. You know, it's like, no, I haven't had any media or technology training, as you might have gathered by now. How are we doing are there any questions? Anybody?
Marita said she's one of the grandmothers, and she said she feels she's getting tougher too, less of a pleaser, maybe. Yeah.
Julia
This
is watching. Hello, Julia. My friend Julia lives just over the hill over there. But I think a lot of us are getting tougher in a sense. You know, we're not willing to put up with the same. Not as we get clearer, you have to. It can come across as being tougher, but you're no longer willing to entertain the nonsense that you did entertain, and you don't want to be wasting your time in conversations or gatherings that, you know, just wipe you out because it's really dull, or, you know, it's a really low vibe going on. And I think we're all being asked to really sharpen up in those terms. Have just become very aware of what we do with our energy, where we spend our time, where we place our energy, because it's our most valuable resource in a sense. Energy and attention. I mean, they're phenomenally valuable, and that's all of our creativity right there. And it's important now, and I think everybody's starting to recognize more and more, and everybody knows, well, you can spot the people that drain your energy very quickly, or want to take your energy and use it for themselves, all of that stuff. So we're all getting much more aware of the games that people play with energy, and it's important. So it comes across as tougher, but in effect, it's more efficient. I think more efficiency and more.
I was sitting here thinking, isn't it interesting that we call it tough? We're so used to being quiet and good and people pleasing, and, you know, let's keep the peace.
Yeah.
That now that we're actually speaking our unconditional truth, we're labeling that as tougher. But it's actually, you know, all of us.
We go through those phases where something gets labeled one thing now, and in 2 years' time, it'll just be accepted as, and it won't have that label anymore. It'll just be, because everybody sharpens up together, and there's a collective process that we all go through that moves the whole collective to a different level. And that can sometimes feel like a bit of a struggle as we move to a different level. But I think that's one of the ways it happens. People are just becoming more energetically conscious and aware of good housekeeping, in a sense, you know, what is required for that.
And I feel like our ability to read a field, minus the details, because we're not interested in the stories, we're actually reading each other's fields like instantly, immediately, even just through a text message. You know, you can feel, oh, I can feel agenda there. Oh, that's
Yeah,
pure.
you
Like,
really can.
not to judge, but it's become so loud in the last few weeks. It's been mind blowing, really mind blowing. We are reading each other's fields. So, you know, is some people might like to call that telepathy, but it's the stories aren't coming, the details aren't coming. There's just this
Instant read on what's
resonance.
going on. And I think that's always been available, but now we're becoming more and more unveiled. And so it becomes easier. More and more people are becoming aware of it. And it's not just that we're reading, but we're also transmitting. So when you write a text, you know, a sharp text, or there's a bit of energy going into that text, that lands very, very quickly. It's always why road rage, I think, gets flares up so quickly, because people think they're in these little boxes protected, you know, and that they can let loose more fully. But of course, their energy isn't contained by the little box of the car. It goes right out. So it gets a response very quickly, and you end up in huge flare-ups at the roadside there, because we we believe we're contained by the little box of the car, but we're not, and so the energy just moves much more directly. You can feel when somebody's driving right up your backside, and you can feel the pressure on them and how unpleasant that is. It's yeah, it's powerful. But
Do you do you have that experience? Or are you speaking from observer point of view? I can't imagine you doing road rage with anyone.
it it's where it comes out more easily then is my
Yeah.
impatience. And I can be quite impatient, you know, across my life, throughout my life. So impatience is always something I have to work with, whether that's with myself or with other people, you know. And it's always this, it's an arrogant internal, um, you know, get out of my way sort of thing. And you know, it's just something that I have to keep coming back to. And actually, I should use your processing techniques. Come back to your processing techniques, because I wanted to ask you about this balance. You know, you have this lovely technique of taking words, the opposite meaning words, and I know you said things are getting much quicker, but that's such a simple, beautiful technique. Would you talk us through that?
Well, I guess it's just understanding, like, uh, tonight, if I've got the word respect, I don't feel respected, I haven't respected myself, then I look immediately for the polar opposite of respect. And I haven't, well, I didn't do that because I was too much in my ball of anger that I didn't have time to actually look. But what I would do now is go and type in, what's the opposite of respect? Well, I mean, that's probably pretty obvious. You could use it as simply as disrespect. So now I know, because I'm feeling disrespected and I'm looking for respect, that I need these two to marry and merge as one. Now, that sounds really easy, and most of the time it can be really easy. But if it's been a big thing for you, then there's going to be excess emotions and feelings and maybe other little programs involved with that. But basically, it's recognizing anything that I'm in has its polar opposite, its dualistic opposite, and my job is to find a way to bring that back into balance. When
And
I put this process together,
how do you bring them back into, do you consciously hold them as energy fields and bring them together, or?
well, when I learnt this process about 12 years ago, I had to do it in writing lists. So I'd pick out, say, my father, and write a list of everything on that list that I thought that he was, and then write the polar opposites, and then say this, what would you call it, invocation, a clearing tool. So if I said my father was controlling, and for me the polar opposite was subservient, I would read out this invocation to both words, owning both of them as my own, and I would feel them collapse. Absolutely feel them collapse. So But what I'm noticing now is, and in the last few weeks, if I get it in my mind and I pull up the polar opposite, I'm just doing this
Yeah.
with the intention of bringing them together and merging as one. That wasn't available 12 years ago, but it's absolutely available now.
Yeah. I learned a
I
lot
might
of
see an
processing. Go on.
I might see an external person and be angry with them because I think they're controlling. And this is fictitious, but so my job is then to look at, okay, why is this controlling playing out in me? I can't see myself being controlling. What's the polar opposite of controlling? It's subservience. So if I've got people pleasing or subservience active in my field, then I'm going to bring in a polar opposite to play that out for me. But the whole program is mine. All of it's mine.
And we can deal with it internally, or life will bring it to us. And that's the beauty
Yeah.
about dealing with it internally, is that you spare yourself a huge amount of conflict and drama on the outside, which is just life
Because
helping to show you
for
your
the
polarized
majority of
state.
things, for the majority of things, yes, David. But if there's some really big things that have played out over and over and over, there might be some other things we need to do, like verbalize that to help neutralize that, especially if it's between yourself and another person. It's not always that, but you can feel the difference. If there's something big that needs more attention, then we might have to go into a little bit of drama for it, because our human being needs to embody the
Yeah.
truth.
And my experience is there's nothing like life teaching you a lesson that you need to move through, because then you really get it. And the processing your way through heavy duty stuff is really beautiful, and it does free up a huge amount of energy in your field. But sometimes you've really got it when you walk into those situations and you're not in any way, or you're not as nearly as entangled as you would have been 6 months or a year ago, simply because you've done a lot of the work internally.
Yeah.
That means you haven't got the same hooks in your field that anchor you into those situations. I was amazed when I saw your processing techniques, because I was introduced to processing properly, although I realized I had done a lot of stuff quite automatically, even as a child, like feeling stuff and making sounds and all of this sort of stuff. It was all releasing energy that I had no idea. A woman called Leslie Temple Thurston, and I trained with her for a little while and hung out with a lot of people that had worked with her, and her processing techniques, which were downloads from her guide that she felt was Archangel Michael. And she did this a while ago, but yours and hers, there was so much similarity. It sort of blew me away, this balancing of polarities. And if anybody's interested in working with that, her book is called The Marriage of Spirit, which is an amazing book. And you've got a processing book, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What is it called? It's up on her website. She won't
I
give us the
have
name.
no idea. I think it's called zero pointing, but I look at that now and I think, yeah, that works. I mean, it changed me so dramatically. When I got this process, I couldn't leave my house. I would have to have a Kahlua and milk to go to the supermarket to get groceries once a week. I was so, I couldn't leave the house. I did
I
this
think that's a
process for
lovely
six.
image, you getting a bit tanked up to go shopping. I think that's marvelous.
Well, I couldn't get too tanked up because I had to drive, but just enough, okay, I can walk out the gate. It was that bad. I did the first step, which they taught me, minute by minute. At the end of step one, I had changed so dramatically. I was running around the house. My son was 10 at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm growing up. I'm growing up. It was growing up, the inner child, the inner teenager, to align with the adult. Not that I did everything. I mean, I'm still doing stuff now, but I finished step one and I hopped on a plane and I flew to Rome and I traveled the whole of Italy and France by myself. I was hanging out with strangers every day. I mean, I changed so dramatically. I needed that back then. But these days I was going to say there's faster ways to do it, but I found that really helpful. I had something practical in front of me, writing lists and seeing how the list of my mother, married the list of that ex-husband, and it married the list of, you started getting repeats. And so I was really, it was like going to university on yourself, understanding all of my own programs.
Yeah. Yeah. I spent years with notebooks in coffee shops, just writing. And in Leslie Temple Thurston's book, she would have you divide a page into 4 squares. She called it the squares technique. And it was just putting all of the different energy of all of the different possibilities, in a sense, the different aspects of a situation. And then you would feel it collapse. You would say her invocation, and the whole thing would collapse. And I found if I did 3 processes on a different aspects of an issue, there would be a huge shift. But I would go in very deep, and I loved it because it was like excavation work. And it, as you say, it really taught me a lot about my inner landscape and my inner prejudices and desires and all of this sort of stuff, because it all just comes up. And I think once your system knows that you're really engaged with this, it really starts to unearth the stuff and bring it up to the light, because your system is intelligent and it's part of the living unified field of the universe. It wants evolution as quickly as is possible. And so it really starts, once it knows we're on board with it, it really moves the stuff up to the surface. It's quite extraordinary. And there are always, for me, there are always those bits that are in resistance, and working with them is where the real juice is. It's wonderful. And as you say, the work goes on all the time. But it does shift, because what I recognized then, I could do it mentally quite quickly.
Yes.
Once I had done acres and acres and acres of written work, it sort of internalizes,
Yes,
because
it does.
our systems are efficient. They don't want, that once they know we've got it, then it can be an internal process.
Absolutely. And I think while we're doing all that writing and making lists and being that thorough, we're actually training our brains to be onto it all more and more and more.
Yeah.
And understanding how it all works. So yeah, I remember being caught in really heavy. Adelaide has one big highway. It has one. It's not even a highway yet. They've been building it for years. Adelaide's quite small, and I got caught in traffic, and this man started with the road rage and fingers flying up and everything, and I'm like, oh God, I don't need that in my field. So I just invocated road rage. I just said, the invocation to road rage, and I've never experienced it again. It just stopped. I've never seen it, never experienced it. But, there is a trick too of this healing. We need to own what's happened to us.
Yeah.
And that same energy, we need to go, okay, where have I done that to another? And most importantly, where do I do that to myself? And I think if those 3 parts are covered, then it's not coming back, 6 months later or a month later or whatever, because we've actually covered all bases. Me, that my other me, and I'm actually the perpetrator that did this to myself. How do I do this to myself?
Yeah, you have to cover all the ground. And what I was shown years ago was that the human energy field is a polarity collapsing device. In effect, it will take the energy of opposites and bring them into the unified field within us is the sushumna, in a sense, that place, that central column where the masculine and feminine are already merged. And you have the channels, the Ida and Pingala, that flow around them. But these are the masculine, feminine channels. As we become more and more fully integrated, those channels are no longer run as individual masculine, feminine. They become part of the central column. This is the theory, anyway. And that happens. So the central column becomes a wider and wider field of energy that draws in the polarities in our life and forces us to look at them, because it's a really strong field of light that wants more, that wants to be bigger and bigger. And so it pushes us to then excavate the places where we're holding polarity in our field and in our consciousness, so that they can become unified. And it's a really brilliant process. And then you see it playing out in a war. Is that the polarized state playing out at a planetary level, but we're all at war in ourselves to some degree or another. And to contribute to peace, you have to bring your field to peace. Otherwise, you're contributing to the energy of war, even just by shouting at the television. So,
two questions here. Marita's asked a great question. It's a really good question because it's so true. Can we get addicted to processes and never ending? Yes, we could. However, we can also understand that, there is lifetimes of stuff to clear. So it's worth spending, a few years or a decade or whatever on them. But you will actually get to the point where what we're talking about. Like I wouldn't even think about doing zero pointing on this stuff today because I know how to do it quicker, smarter. This is zero pointing. So yeah, we can absolutely get addicted to processes, but we can also trust ourselves that when we know that we're done with processes, it's done. Like we're so onto it now that there's a great place for processes initially.
yeah,
The next
I think
question.
if you're addicted to mental approaches, because processing can trap people in their mental field, and they think they're doing it, but they're not actually feeling. So it can trap you in your, and if you're a very mental person, you have to really work to feel the process as it's unfolding in your system. And I did question myself because I have a very addictive nature. Is this? And I did spend years in coffee shops, as I said, writing, and at home. And I thought, oh, maybe I am just avoiding life now because I'm processing, and but then there came a point where I could process no more. I couldn't do that. And I started to realize, oh, it's happening internally. So it all becomes a part of your evolution. And sometimes we have to go in really deep and give ourselves to something to come out the other side in a very different place, in a very different state. So, and your system, if you're paying attention, and the processing will help you become much more sensitive because you're no longer clogged with a lot of stuck energy. Things move very, very quickly. So you become more sensitive and more aware and hopefully more honest with yourself too. And that's part of the process. But it's always a fine line to judge, are we becoming addicted to anything in terms of our lives? So yeah. You said there was another question as well, huh?
Yeah, Julie has asked, when you say an invitation to road rage, what does that sound like, please? What is the appropriate wording? But the wording I was given for the zero pointing process was these set of words. I'll do road rage. I accept, allow, honor, value, trust, respect, forgive, love, believe, receive, release, surrender, command. I'm grateful and accept full responsibility for all energies associated with road rage, all resistance, all attachment, all judgment, all projection, covering all dimensions of pure love. Thank you. It is done. And so when you're doing polarities, you actually feel things collapsing in your body. So, I
That's
mean, I
true.
think I just did that.
And maybe you could write that, because that's quite a long list of words there, each of them having quite a lot of power. Maybe you could write that or copy and paste it into the comments afterwards, so people get to see that. Yeah. But there is on Morgan's website her amazing book of processing. So zeropointing.com is Morgan's website. Go and check that out because it really is worth it. And if somebody hasn't done any processing, it's an invaluable tool. It really can. It means that you're taking responsibility for your body, your energy field, for your life, and learning how to work with it in intricate detail. And it becomes a beautiful process. Part of the love affair that we have to have with ourselves, I think, is all of this time and energy and attention we give to ourselves is part of the flowering process. And often it's to make up for the time and energy and attention we didn't get, or we feel we didn't get you know, so we have to become the parents to ourselves that we didn't ever have. And I think the processing is really important, because you're teaching all of these individualized aspects of self how to be human, in a sense. I was in a temper tantrum governed by my 4-year-old for the first 40 years of my life. And my 4-year-old temper tantrum was running the show, you know, but it wasn't doing it externally. I wasn't raging. I was addicted. I was drinking, and I was refusing to live. And I think a lot of people live from those places, those hurt, wounded places that gets buried under a mask that we present to the world, but we're actually being run by really unhappy little children. And it's a shame to have your unhappy little child running your life as an adult.
Yeah, then this is what these processes do. They're actually us taking responsibility for reparenting ourselves, especially if we can use the list from parents, you know, other family members. We've picked up all our programs from them. So stepping in first and saying, I don't want any of those programs, it helps us stop, you know, projecting and finger pointing at them. Okay, so I was a very smothering mother with my daughter, very smothering, I think because of my childhood. My mother was, sorry, Mum, neglectful of her children. My grandmother was very smothering of her children, and the grandmother before that was, you know, let them do their own thing.
So
So we
there's the
get these, you know,
polarized state, isn't it? There's the
there's
polarized state
that,
running down through
that down through the,
generations.
yeah, we can see that. You know, when we grow up and we think, usually by teenagers, I am never going to be like my mother. When we flip over to the polar opposite, but you end up with exactly the same result, because they're the same program. They're just two spectrums of that.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you're going to do
Yep.
some work and really start looking at your family history and all the programs that your family members had, you're already in front. You're already in front. I mean, and I was running around. I'm growing up. Oh my God, I'm growing up. And my son's like, Mum, but you're 40. You're old. You're already grown up. And I'm like, I'm growing up from the inside, you know. And I changed so dramatically, you know, with every list that I did. It was self-evident within 24 hours. My behavior changed with my kids. We became less mother and son and mother and daughter. And we shifted into, gosh, I'm just a part-time guardian to this soul. Like at 13, I said to my son, right, you start making all of your own decisions. My job is to back you up. Because I didn't have all those programs from my ancestral parents and grandparents that was trying to teach me to be the polar opposite of my mother with my son. So, you know, it helped me not accidentally dump those programs on my son. I was really teaching him self-empowerment.
Yeah, beautiful. It is beautiful, isn't it, that process, because it sets us free. It's amazing, I think. And I certainly wouldn't be doing the work I do now if I hadn't done the processing. It's been a vital part. And it started for me in 12-step, doing step work in 12-step processes. Step 4 is you make a really thorough list of everybody that you believe has done you wrong, you know, all of your grievances, and then you have to go deeper, and all the people that you have harmed. And my list was hundreds of pages long, and for me, writing became a really important thing. That I would give the pen, I would turn around internally and give the pen to a part of myself and say, here, tell me how it was. And the energy would just open up and flow. And I would be in floods and floods of tears as I was writing, because all of this poison, in effect, was just flowing through the pen onto the page and out of my system. And it was extraordinary. It was extraordinary healing. And I still find that that's a great technique is not quite the right word, but a lovely way to really energize your writing is to consciously give the pen to the part that you want to speak, and then that sets up a direct flow. So if you are writing, give that a whirl, because it's a neat way to get you out of your mind, in effect, and right into the heart of what is wanting to be expressed. But it
Yeah.
really worked so well for me, and it opened the
And you
taps,
got
literally tears and tears, floods and floods of tears, or rage, whatever was needed. So very
And
powerful.
that's where all our gold is. But the other thing too is, as we neutralize these things and we're not carrying them, and they're seeds of information in our field that we're sending out. I want more of this. I want more of that. As we neutralize these, we're creating space for more of this to come in. Our
Yeah,
souls get louder.
yeah,
We're making space in our body. You know, I think about every 10th, 11th, 12th list that I did, I actually felt more of my soul anchor into my body. So, you know, there's this the rewards for the work that we'll do on ourselves. And we forget, we get so distracted. We deserve this. No one else is going to do it for us.
no,
It's an act of self-love, isn't it?
it is totally. I mean, and it is weird now because so much is being done for us, in a way that I don't think possibly is unlike any other, in terms of the cosmic energies that are raining down onto the planet are phenomenal in terms of helping this process, because they come into our system and literally open up the deep pockets and chasms and the places where we're empty or we're full of grievances. But you still have to work consciously with it. You can't just hand over responsibility for your development. It has to be you as the guiding force in your system, recognizing where some of this energy needs to be focused, because the energy is vast and truly very highly available. But it does require us to work with it and to be conscious participants in this process.
Mm, yeah.
And you
What do you
get to
think about
know.
your friendship circles? Do you think about friendship circles? We've got acquaintances. Actually, most of them are dropping away now. Our circle's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But I always used to say, um, those people that I only spoke to once a month, you know, our connection was quite weak. The people I spoke to once a week, you know, that connection was a bit stronger. The girlfriends that I spoke to every day, we started reading each other's minds. So if we put that same energy into connecting just with our higher self every day, we build the strength of the relationship, whether it's the higher self or it's a team of people. Somebody's asked here, Sarah, do you call the guides or beings into work, or do they just arrive? When this first started 23 years ago, I had 2 months that spent the first couple of years with me. And then Merlin came, and Merlin came with a female. She wasn't a wizard. She was called the Soul Mother, magnificent woman with curly, long white hair. And the two of them taught me for many, many years. Then they disappeared, and there's been no guides at all for a long time. So this big group of these really tough women that have turned up this week, they're here for a specific reason. I mean, the training is intense, it's confronting, and I did not ask for them. They've just turned up uninvited, absolutely uninvited, but they're working very clever with myself and another person. Um, it's blowing my mind. I mean, how powerful what they're doing, what they're teaching, and what they're guiding has actually been. Um, and I think if we just, you know, if you want a team of people like that, assholes like that, invite them in. I think they'd come.
But there's also
Sorry, I didn't mean.
they come when we all have our guides, and Merlin, I think Merlin is a guide for many, isn't he? My understanding of Merlin is that he is a planetary guide, and he's available for many. And my parents bought a plot of land and built a house and moved into that house a few months before I was born. But the place they bought their house was on a little bit of land called Merlin's Cross, and we used to play on the crossroads, which was Merlin's Cross, and and pretend that he was buried there. So he was always a part of my mythology, even as a little child. And then he showed up as a guide when I started psychic development, and he came up again. He hadn't been around for a while, and then he came up again very recently. But my understanding of Merlin, he's a planetary guide and an archetypal figure who is available to anybody that would call on him, really.
Yep.
But do you feel, like you say, you had no guides for a long period of time? Yeah. Do you feel that you integrated the guidance, that it just starts to become a part of what you are, who you are?
What happened for me was I was so reliant on them, I think. You know, I just got addicted. I didn't want to talk to people on the phone anymore. I just, come on, Merlin, come on, Soul Mother. And I think there came a point, I think it was 6 years ago, where they just disappeared, completely and utterly disappeared. Merlin turned up again for the first time only a few weeks ago. These ones are specific. They're specific. I don't feel like they're going to be with me for the rest of my life. I think they're here for a specific job that need a cleanup job, something that needs to be done. And they've told us, you know, they were arranged before we even arrived. When I got to this point, or we got to this point, that they would come in and guide us for the rest of the way. I don't know. I think, you know, we are our guides. Anyone that we bring in is just an aspect of us anyway. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm still a little bit surprised that they've turned up, but obviously we'll need some help at the moment.
I was always told that, you know, we are you, and we just hold the information that you pretend that you're divorced from. And when you're ready to claim that information for yourself, then we integrate, we become you. We're no longer separate. And I think that that process continues for me. I think so. And it doesn't seem like I get guidance from figures that are external to me. There's always just this flow of, oh, not always, but, you know, usually when I need it, then there is this flow of information and energy that that I call guidance. And I never had names for guides other than Merlin, because I knew who he was. And I never really wanted names for guides because I knew that I would possibly get too attached to them if I did.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
so, but I'm very aware when I work on a teleconference that there's a huge team of beings show up to hold the space. And that always astounds me. And I go through an invocation, in a sense, to invite different layers of energy, different levels of beings in. But the field that shows up always amazes me. And that brings us back to the level of support that is available at the moment. I think it is unbelievable, really, and is there for the asking. So whatever you're doing, if you feel lost or unsupported, just take some time and sit and ask, and you will feel that support come in. It's very, very beautiful, and really important that we know that we're not alone, because that feeling of aloneness and struggling through life without help and support is a major symptom of the delusion of separation that we're all engaged in dismantling. So we're not separate from each other or the planet or our non-physical aspects, counterparts, and support teams. So yeah, and I think people forget so easily. People forget so easily simply because of the hypnotized state we've moved into around separation, that we think everything is separate. And so it's easy just to forget that the support is there. And so people forget to ask so very, very easily. So it is an important one, an important habit to get
Marita's just,
into. Go
yeah,
on.
definitely. And Marita's written here, last week I spoke about the monad showing up a few weeks ago. And, when I channel, I'm saying they said this, they said that. And I've never known what they were. But when the monad showed up, they said, now you've met they. We're all these different aspects of you. But, we can find a guide anywhere. Like if you have a dream and you pull up 2 or 3 of the main symbols or people or, the standout things in a dream, and the next morning bring that, choose one of them and bring it again before you close your eyes and say, okay, I remember seeing you last night. Can you please let me know what you were there to tell me? And so there we make this a guide. A guide's real, or is everything just energy? And we're remembering and learning how to read energy, communicate with energy, and some of us like a face to that. And this energy complex that's coming in and working with me at the moment, when I see them, they're a bunch of old women. They look so loving. I just want to run up to them. But, they come with this really sharp, clever stuff. Trick me. They keep tricking me into finding more stuff. But, are they real beings, or are they just an energy complex that want to be seen as that crone energy, that grandmotherly, hard, thorough, loving, unconditional love? They laugh at me all the time. Actually, I think they're quite rude. But are they even real? And how long are they here for? I don't need to attach to any of that. I just need to be grateful, and I'm incredibly grateful for them showing up. I didn't ask for them though.
But that is an interesting question, I think, isn't it? Are they real? Are they figments? And in the end, because as you explore that question, that in itself collapses a lot of boundaries, I think, because there's no such thing as external in that sense. Once you start to get into these levels of yourself and the field, nothing is external, nothing is outside of us, and everything is consciousness. And so a field of energy that represents itself as grandmothers, or for me, the field of energy that most frequently shows up is the lion-headed beings. Are they real? They tell me they're a race of beings from another star system, and that I'm one of them, that their DNA is woven into our DNA, our collective DNA, that they were some of the early seeders of life on this planet. Is that real? I don't know. It feels real to me. And I think many of us have that understanding that we aren't just human, that we come from the stars, and that our DNA was brought in, and so I think many of us have that awareness, and so what they tell me feels real, but I always take things when I'm working with a client and I start to see a story in their field, and if I'm talking about the story, I'll say it's as if this happened, rather than, oh, this is your past life, because I don't know. And often I'm aware that my soul might give me a story that helps me to break free of a pattern, but I don't really know whether that actually happened, and I don't care that much. It's like I'm not attached to the details in that sense. I'm attached to evolution and not to the details. And I think that helps the process move more quickly too.
Yeah. I think, any of us, anything that we can create with our imagination with the intent of collapsing or clearing or healing or whatever can be done. I've known people that, I've seen people, I think they teach it at the Cancer Council here in Australia, actually, to imagine a Pac-Man inside of your body, going through your body and munching up all the cancer. There's just one little thing. I've seen people who play, I don't play any games on my phone, but I've seen people play games on their phone, understanding that every time I win, another program is going to be cleared. Our imaginations is our creative self at work. So we can develop all of our own processes to do, in fun and joy. Every time I pull a weed, because I was a massive gardener, terrible gardener. I was like OCD. I used to vacuum my front. I was so bad. But every time I walked out and saw a weed, I set the intention of every weed I pull is another part of, something that I no longer need. It's just setting up new neural pathways, consciously setting up new neural pathways for yourself, that really everything that you do all day, every day is bringing you to the 0 point field, to a
And
place of
challenging
neutrality.
the old programming that is often based in superstition and fear that, oh, if I walk under that ladder, disaster is going to happen, or, that sort of thing. Again, we are creative and we can pull those things to us, or we'll ascribe, we'll give power to an experience that happens then and say, oh, well, that's because I walked under that ladder. Making those patterns work for you rather than against you is a really important part of shifting into elevated consciousness, I think, because life is all patterns. Everything is a pattern.
Yeah. We discussed earlier on, we were talking and we were discussing how, last week's show, we discussed your childhood sexual assault.
Yeah.
And I was saying to you that, I had that as well. Through all that conscious work that I was doing and the 0 pointing and whatever it took, I was clearing it. And it was only about, well, actually, I said to you 2 years ago, but I have been away from America for longer than that. So probably 3.5 years ago, just out of the blue one night, which I know now is the monadic part of myself, said, you realize that, you went to the absolute depths of sexual repulsiveness. Like you went through and covered all of that through your childhood, you healed it in your adulthood, and now here you are on the other end of the spectrum of that, learning the highest frequencies of sacred sexuality, like Helios Gamos and all that sort of stuff. So you've virtually become a specialist. You know the darkest spectrum of sexuality, and you're learning the lighter spectrum of sexuality that anybody can do.
And that's the full polarized state, in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, it's neutralizing all of it and understanding it wasn't something bad that happened to me. Oh, in that moment, I went, oh my God, that was spectacular training. I'd do all of that again just for this.
And I love how you term that training, that the devastating experiences that happen to us when we don't understand, we don't have the conception or the capacity to understand what's happening. So they feel utterly devastating and shattering. And as you do the profound work of healing and bringing those torn and bedraggled states to a place of neutrality and wholeness, then it simply becomes experience rather than labeled as anything, devastating and it's very easy to get locked into victim culture because it's perpetuated by all of the media and stuff. And it's to move yourself out of victim culture where you can stand and say, well, yeah, I've had really challenging experiences through my life. The things like sexual abuse and addiction and cancer and all of those things, and all of them become real, really juicy stuff to draw on when you're working with other people or when you're walking down the road. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just knowing, oh, it doesn't really matter what happens to us. We're not wounded by any of it unless we decide we're going to carry those wounds with us. And that's extraordinary. I think that's really beautiful freedom. And that you can point that out to somebody else if they're looking for that, and that's really beautiful too.
I think it's helpful for people who haven't neutralized it yet to be able to see voices of, observe others that have been through it all and extreme, cases of it all, be able to function as normal human beings.
I can't say that I'm a
With,
normal human being. Can't say I'm.
well,
I know what you mean. I do. Excuse me a
Considering,
minute.
where we've been, to be able to come out the other side, not addicted, um, able to, function fairly normally, without, because I don't know if you remember, like back then when we lived in that, I couldn't leave the house. I was terrified of stuff happening to my daughter. Like I could hardly function. I lived in survival and fear the whole time, which is why when I finished that step one in zero pointing and hopped on a plane and travelled the whole of Italy and France by myself, I was safe with all these strangers I was inviting to homes for dinner. I wouldn't have been able to do that. I couldn't. I couldn't even go to the supermarket, let alone go to the other side of the world. And I travelled all the time by myself after that. I found it freeing and I
And
loved
that's an
it.
extraordinary level of freedom, isn't it? Because traveling, it's one thing for a man to travel on his own, but for a woman to travel on her own in the world we live in, it's that's for a lot of women, they wouldn't even contemplate that, because it feels too risky. So that's a really high level of freedom, huh?
It is. After that work, I was walking the streets of Paris and Italy, in the middle of the night because they all sleep there all afternoon. So, they're all out to 2 or 3 in the morning. And I would walk for hours through the night by myself as a woman without a fear in the world, being invited to people's homes. I just went in. I mean, the change in me was astronomical. I still have a bit of shyness, in big groups and things like that, but I'm good with that. I don't care.
I have that too. There's still, but I was living as an addict. That was my way of hiding, was just living as an addict, completely stoned for probably 15 years of my life. I would be the first thing I would do in the morning would be roll a joint. It would be the last thing I would do at night was smoke a joint, and then all of the other drugs I could get my hands on in between. And I just lived as an addict, and that was my way of dealing or not dealing with whatever I had experienced. And it was I wouldn't I'd reached the end of that. My body had reached the end of that, and I was dying in effect. And so you get kicked out the other side, and having to do the work then transforms everything. And it's difficult for me to feel into how I used to live, the life I used to have. It's like, wow, that was really unpleasant, really, really unpleasant to live that limited and that frightened a life. So it is extraordinary, the level of transformation. I think the transformation is also happening so much more quickly these days for anybody that becomes available to it. Then the energies that are bathing the planet really support that and will move things very quickly. And because millions of people have already trodden that path, that also makes it much, much more available. It's like that 4-minute mile that nobody thought they could do until Roger Bannister did it in 1952. And then it became an easy thing for people to break through, athletes anyway. And it's the same for us. Once somebody has set the template in the collective field, it becomes much easier for others to move through what once seemed like a really difficult block. And now millions of people have walked through their trauma and come out the other side. So we're no longer as locked in, because it's only fairly recently in human history that we've had the tools to deal with trauma. Before, you just sucked it up and carried on, and it never ever got processed. And our ancestors, well, we know that we have to deal with a lot of heavy duty stuff from our ancestors. We've been doing that for a long time. And that's because it's there in bucket loads, and it acts like a field, like a cloak around the planet. And that's why we do the ancestral work we're freeing up the energy field of the planet, in effect, the human aspect of the planet's energy field, which acts like a dense cloak that locks us into planetary isolation, in a sense. So it's important that we do the ancestral work too. always, we come back to this point today, the huge help that's available for all of it, including from
Absolutely. And
grandmothers. Huh?
I was told a few months ago, and probably not for the first time, but it really stuck a few months ago, that we came here. I'm not a fan of labels at all, but some of us came here. We came on purpose. We picked specific family lineages, that we'd been involved with before. And every time I did that zero pointing, all the work that I do, I always copy and paste over into my ancestry. I try to make that linkage. And I really feel I had this really bizarre experience about 6 weeks ago, 9/11. This really bizarre experience about 6 weeks ago. I woke up in the middle of the night
It's 11
and
here.
11, 11, 11. Oh, wow. Um, and I was there observing it, but I'd become an alien. God, I hope my mum doesn't watch this. I'd become an alien. I was Pleiadian, and I'm sitting on the end of my mother. No, I'm in bed. My mother's sitting on the end of my bed. I'm wide awake. I woke in the middle of the night, and I'm telling my mother all of this. I'm this. I'm this. I came specifically to do that. When you pass over, go and check with all the ancestors. I wasn't just clearing me, I was clearing all them as well. I've cleared our whole ancestral lineage. Now that seems like a lot, and part of me wouldn't really believe that, but I hadn't spoken to my mother for 12 years. I just couldn't speak to her because, for whatever reasons, the childhood stuff. I saw her for the first time about 3 months ago, and we are just in love with each other. There is nothing there between us but the most pure, incredible, unconditional love between us. It's mind-blowing. So I know that all the work that I've done absolutely affected my mother. So I absolutely believe it's affected all the other lineages, ancestors as well. But yeah, I was told very clearly that we came here. It was never just going to be about us, even though we thought it was just about us. We were changing our DNA, which was connected to all, DNA generations forth and generations back as well. So we're at the good bit now, though, I think.
I
As
think,
I
I really think, and for me, now the eclipses and the 11/11 have just propelled us into very different territory now. And I mean, I've been shown this and told this, that you're no longer in the same world that it was. But what I found on Monday, was it Monday? 11/11 was Saturday. Sunday, I felt quite euphoric, blissed out. Monday, I woke up and I went into meditation, and it was like, Jesus Christ, I don't recognize anything of my inner landscape. And it's taken a while now to start to find my feet. And so it really does feel like it's a whole different ball game that we're in now, in a sense. And everything is going to be much more amplified. I have kept having the recognition that a lot of, and this sounds, it's like there is a bifurcation or a splitting happening, and a lot of people haven't dealt with much yet, and it's going to start landing quite quickly now. If there's a big backlog for you to look at, it's going to start landing with a lot of force, and that's going to look like judgment, but that's how karma works. In effect, karma is just the balancing of the books, and just the opportunity to look at something again and try a different approach. Really, it's an extraordinary gift in a sense, but when it's smacking you around the face, it doesn't feel like it. But I think for a lot of people, and most of the planet hasn't really taken a huge amount of responsibility. It's really going to start to play out now. So
know,
they're going to look a bit strange.
David,
Hmm?
there's a part of me who said, there's a part of me who I don't know if it's going to be as difficult for anyone else's. And you mentioned this before. We've written these new codes. It's there. It's been put into the grid. It's available there. So it almost feels like to me that more than not will just be able to set the intention to align with that and activate their own codes of that happening within them, and it's just done.
But you have to realize first that you can do that. And that's an awfully big shift for people to make. Now, as we move into this energy, I think more and more people will make that shift, because the shift comes internally, doesn't it? It's like a switch. It just lights up circuitry inside. But I still think we've got a bit of a challenging sort of 6-month period whilst this energy, while we settle, because I do believe we've moved on to a new timeline. And I keep seeing this. For me, it's expressing itself as a golden timeline that's rising up out of the planet. And it's a timeline of naturalness that we have lived before, and that we moved off in order to have our experience of density, and now we're coming back to it. And it's a timeline of deep, deep connectedness with ourselves and with our body and with the natural world. And I think this is really pushing now into collective awareness.
So at some point, the 100th monkey effect is going to have to just take over, like a flip.
I'm hoping that will happen, that there will be this extraordinary flip where the balance of consciousness on the planet just carries us over into a very different place. But things take a while in physical reality, don't they? You know, it happens instantaneously in energetic reality, and in physical reality, it takes a much longer time period to play out. So, and I think for the collective, because it's a big, big field of energy, that can actually be months or years, you know?
Yeah, you think about what we do in our groups. We actually set the groups up in oneness, and they're set up like a monad. You've got, 12 or 15 people in there. They're all doing their part, and everything that each fractal of that monad does is available for everyone else in the group.
Yeah.
So we're not working the groups as individuals anymore. We're working the groups as a collective. The groups are set up as a collective, oneness. And so when we do the shares afterwards and people come out and talk about their experiences, sometimes we've been absolutely mind blown at how similar they all are. And we know, and as you're listening to the other person talking about what they experienced, you can, like, there's an awareness of like, I know I was doing this, but I know I did that as well. We're actually moving into practicing this working in oneness. Denise has got, when we work on ourselves, we're also working on the collective energies. We can't do that as we are one, intrinsically joined.
Yeah.
These groups are being set up understanding that this is beyond me. I am doing this for myself and the whole. So it's service to self and service to others all at the same time, or oneness with self and oneness with the whole all at the same time. So there's a lot of people setting up groups now operating in this manner, utilizing all the fractals of the 5 people are there or 10 people are there or whatever, for all of us to be working on the one same thing.
Yeah. And I've been doing that with groups, and at the end of a group, the collective experience we've had is offered, like we consciously offer it back to the collective field. So on a group, my Sunday groups, something between 100 and 150 people. So it's a nice field of energy, and a lot gets worked through. And then we offer it back to it's like, and what I see every time we do this, and my awareness shifts to the underside of the planet, if that's the right expression. And it's as if we upload a program into the collective field. That's how I experience it, that this happens. I lift it up, and it gets inserted into the matrix, in a sense, as a new piece of wiring, a new piece of programming. And that's my experience. So something gets worked through, solutions, healings, whatever, and then so something gets recoded,
Yeah. On the 4th of November, I had this incredible experience. My they, I guess it was the monad, directed me to raise my vision to the highest frequency I could possibly find, which I think at the time was around the 12th dimension, the monad dimension, and look at a situation that I'd been working with it look at a situation from that perspective. And so I was from way up there, I'm watching this whole situation. And from there, I was in such compassion and understanding. And they said to me, now send that coding that observation from here and rewrite that whole thing. And I did it. And by the 9th, everything just flipped so dramatically, so unexpectedly. Like, I still can't believe it. So these are the sorts of things that we're capable of. So I mean, I thought if I can't find faith, all I'd have to do is go up to that monad frequency or higher, have a look at how limited faith or lack of faith has worked in my life, where I've sabotaged myself to not, align with faith, where I haven't respected myself. Watch it from that perspective, and then use the frequency that I've gained there to rewrite the timeline that I'm living here. We're so capable. The first time I went to America, I slept for 42 hours straight, and I'm like, what the hell's wrong with me? And my higher self at the time said, this is called jet lag. What next time you travel, when you go home, just align with your future self that's already bypassed it. It's already got it all sorted out. So I did that. When I hopped on the plane, I just saw myself already home in Adelaide with, bypassed jet lag. And I do that every time I travel now, and I've never, ever had jet lag again. So we don't realize that it's our energy. We're allowed to go in and out and play wherever we want to.
And that we're contained by the beliefs we have about ourselves. And so each time you extend or expand out beyond a limited belief and do something like that, rewrite your timeline, which is a phenomenal piece of engineering, in effect, just working with energy. But it's like we're moving collectively from that place of thinking of ourselves purely as physical beings, and we're now recognizing that we are energy beings and that everything is energy and can be worked at that level. And it's just a bit of a process for the collective to shift from the old paradigm way of thinking into the new way of thinking. And those of us that are living this life are pushing that envelope collectively, taking it out into those dense collective fields and breaking those up and allowing everybody behind to have an easier experience, I think, because those pathways have been trodden. I think it's
Yeah. I do want to point this out, though. I believe that if I went in there with the intention of an outcome, it wouldn't have worked. I mean, it was done in such purity. The only intention was, I've got to bring this back to pure love. I've got to remain in this state of surrender and letting go. That no part of the human was trying to change anything except how I felt about something. But it flipped over into a whole new reality. Now, I was not expecting that in any way, shape, or form. So I think if we try to use that process to change another person, or, with the ego attached, I don't think we'd be as successful.
But if you were that egoically attached, you wouldn't be able to access the 12th dimension in that effect as well. So there's always, I think, a safeguard. Do you know what I mean? It's like as you become less and less attached to egoic outcomes, you open up to more possibilities. And whilst you're still really attached to egoic outcomes, those higher dimensions aren't as available to you. And that's the beauty of the way we're designed, in effect, and the way this is all designed, isn't it? That the damage you can do is limited by the by the level to which you can operate in a sense.
Yeah.
if that makes sense. We're coming up to 11:26, almost an hour and a half, and I would like to finish with a bit of a meditation at some point. Anything else you want to
No,
say?
I think timing's perfect.
Are
I
there any
love one of your
questions any questions?
No, I've been keeping an eye on them. It's all good.
Marvelous. So shall we thank you for everybody that's joined us watching, either on the live on Facebook or on the replay. This will go on YouTube channels as well. So yeah, sending lots of love to you and thank you. This is an ongoing regular experiment for us. So if you've enjoyed this one, tune in next time. Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Morgan?
No, I was just going to say thank you again. It's been lovely spending this time with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I look forward to your little meditation.
Okay. Lots of love to you, and I'll talk to you afterwards. Huh?
Mhm.
There was something, I was leading a small group last night, and something very quick happened. And it's very much about what Morgan and I have talked about today, the level of support and help that's available. It was very, very simple. And I thought, I was lying in bed this morning thinking, and I thought, oh, that's what would like to come in to end this off for us today. So join with me, huh? And begin by just closing your eyes and allowing the breath to draw you inwards. And as you follow the breath and really connect your awareness to the breath, use that breath to draw in life force and prana. Doing that consciously. We're always breathing life force, but as soon as we bring awareness to that, it amplifies the process, brightens the energy. Bring awareness into your heart field, there in the center of your chest, and allow that to unfold and expand. You're really giving that some space and some time. Letting the heart field become the dominant field. Relaxing the whole body. Letting go of any tensions. Take a moment to invite all dimensions of your higher self, your greater self, to really be present with you, in you, for you. And become aware of your spine, a strong column of support. Feel it deep in the pelvis and flowing right up through the back into your neck, supporting the skull. And allow awareness to travel from the heart up, just touching underneath the crown. Take a few breaths here just to softly open the crown. Releasing any tensions there, any programs that exist in your crown, limiting your capacity to connect. Just give them permission to flow out. And so here we invite a golden column of support, a golden flow of light to flow in. It's an active column of strength and support. Available now, I think, in a way unlike any other time I've experienced it. So invite this column of golden light to flow in through the crown and into your skeletal system, bringing strength and support there to the densest, strongest part of our physical system. Golden light, strength and support flowing right through the spine, through the strong bones of the arms and the ribs, into the pelvis, down into the long bones of the legs. Feel this golden light flowing as support, as strength. Your strength. Bring it in. Allow yourself to receive this. And as it settles deep into your bony structure, allow it to flow into any area of your body that needs strength and support. Any organ, any limb, any part. Taking it there with your breath, with your awareness. And then take a moment to consciously direct it to any area of your life that needs strength and support. Your finances, your relationships, anything, your work. Bring strength and support, this golden light, into whatever area of your life is calling for it. Knowing that you are not ever separate from strength and support. Recognize that and allow that to be true for you. Okay, we are done for today. Thank you so much. Lots of love to you. Take care.
Thank
Bye.